Good day, everyone. So today I've got Radostina with me. Today we are actually talking about vocational indicators. And this chat came about from one of our discussions that recently there's a lot of readings, at least for me, from people who are looking for their purpose in terms of where they should be going in their career direction, because it's almost like this current Saturn-Uranus closing square has brought about this, what I call clash of the times. And it's time to kind of pivot. I think the keyword here is pivot, and to redirect your life's direction and structures in order to welcome a new cycle.
First of all, I'm really happy that we are back together discussing astrology.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yes. It's been a hectic summer, to be honest.
Right.
I was planning on having more relaxed time, and it turned out that it was quite a busy one. But yeah, the topic of where am I heading towards in this life in regards to career, and being more authentic, and
Right.
finding the thing that people actually want to be doing and making sense for them and making them happy is something that is popping up more and more lately. And people are really on a crossroad, and they really want to be doing something that makes sense. And it's even not so much about how much money it will bring in the short term, but it's an investment towards a happier, more meaningful future in their work life. And that's definitely like they're looking for their mission in life, basically.
Do you find that after we've like officially switched over from the Earth era to the Air era, like post 2020, after that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in December 2020, that it's almost like we are still trying to grapple with making sense of 2020. And 2021 is really like that decision-making year. And then 2022 will be when we really need to execute whatever plans we formulated in 2021.
Yeah, it's like a transition year. It's like finding the balance maybe, or finding new ways as well.
I mean, it's like that square between Saturn and Uranus this year, which is like 3 times, I think, in 2021.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, I think we've got eclipses highlighting that, that square as well. So it's almost like this year we're making plans, and then next year we have to make that decision to leap off the cliff.
And also materialize, because the nodes are changing from Gemini, the Gemini Sagittarian axis to Taurus Scorpio. So it's all about the money, baby.
And then the nodes will somehow either conjunct or square that Saturn-Uranus aspect, which will still be active in 2022, by the way. And it's highlighted by eclipse, and the notes are there. It's like, wow, I just see like there's this like upgrade of our personal timelines. It seems to me that things will only accelerate from now on in terms of living the Aquarian age, so to speak.
Yeah, but on a material level, like money-wise, there might be some struggles.
But having said that, I find that the air era, right, is really like, you know how the Earth era is more about that fixed or permanent job contract in which you just, regardless of what you do, you get this kind of a fixed rate at the end of the month, be it how much or how little you do, plus the benefits that comes along with it. But now I find that more and more of those being taken away, and it's being replaced by, be it project-based work.
Yeah.
And anything that's like freelance.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's actually I had a client earlier today, and he was on a crossroad in his career path, and it was interesting because he felt like he has to be doing one thing,
Right.
and it should be one thing only, and that's that. And because of this belief, he couldn't see the opportunities that he's getting. And then when I told him that he doesn't necessarily have to be stuck in one place and do one thing, and this actually will make him a lot freer and feeling more confident in what he's doing, and actually making more money if he's
Right.
doing different things. And he was like, oh, you're right, and I've always wanted to be doing this, but I for some reason I thought that I have to have one job. And I'm like, no, you don't have to.
I think that's like fixed income become variable income, fixed working hours become flexible working hours, fixed location become working from anywhere in the world, you know. And job security, as per pre-2020, it becomes like on-demand jobs. Like,
I think that as I mentioned before, that people will be wanting to be more and more authentic in the way they work and to believe in what they're doing. So I think it's quite an exciting time that we're living in, even though it's a little bit scary because of all the insecurity and all the changes and all the impossibility of really planning the future. It's still the uncertainty is quite strong.
I think it's almost like, you know, in the Earth era, we've been kind of like put into a mold as defined by people up there, what they want us to be. And so we just kind of conform into that norm.
Yeah, but speaking of the Aquarian era, Aquarius is a fixed sign. So it's a little bit tricky because there's still some sort of a mold, but it's more of I'll be doing whatever I want. Nobody's going to tell me how to do it and what to do.
Yeah. I mean, when I do like a vocational horoscope for people, I always try to tell them in the beginning of the reading that what I'm actually trying to tell you is to profile your unique selling point. What are your special know-hows or skills that really sums up your unique offering to the world?
Yeah, and at the same time, you will see in my presentation in a moment that I have mentioned that even though I'm an Aquarian person myself, and I have put in the last slide that wherever Capricorn and Saturn are, this is where we will struggle the most, but this is where we can become masters of that area. And oftentimes it happens to be part of our career path.
I have it in as part of my presentation later as well, is that Saturn also represents what actually you need to go out there to achieve in order to get the most innate fulfillment as well. And with that, Saturn is the most tangible planet. And so whatever that you work via Saturn's like the grind of it all, you know, really put in the hours to kind of perfect, because Saturn also rules like perfecting something along the way.
Yeah.
You will somehow, as you said, master the skills over it, but also you'll become like a teacher, because Saturn is also a teacher planet as well.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of, you know, spread your knowledge wide and far. In this Aquarian age, I mean, we can just record a video, blast it out there, and people will be like, oh, okay, I didn't know all this are possible. Things are so kind of instantaneous. I mentioned to my friend today that Aquarius is the sign of instant karma.
That's interesting.
Because of the co-rulers, because Saturn is the karma bit, but Uranus is like things that are instant, really fast.
Yeah.
So whatever that kind of you decide to really put your heart and soul into, you can reap the benefits via this kind of Aquarian instant karma kind of energy. And this actually enables you to scale up whatever you want to do by multitudes that you never have imagined. Yeah. So very interesting times, people. But then it's navigating.
That's a Chinese curse, isn't it? To live in interesting times.
Well, it can be on one hand very interesting and exciting, which is Aquarius, but it can also be that Aquarius is also the sign of like acceleration. And this brings along issues with like, as people are trying to adjust from one era to another, there's a lot of grief involved because it's almost like one identity within you has to somewhat be released permanently from yourself, and there's like an acknowledging and conscious letting go, because times from now onwards is only going to go faster and faster.
It's exciting, especially when Uranus enters Gemini, then things will be getting even more interesting.
So what do you have to present for us though, like with the vocational?
I have the basics. I really have the basics from Western astrology perspective. What are the main things that we look at when we are looking for our career path and when we are reading a chart? Shall I share my screen with you so we can take a look at this? Maybe. Yes. Okay. So we have the chart. We have the 12 houses, and what we are looking in the chart is the second house, the sixth house, and the 10th house. The second house is the house of finances, the house of money, the house of how we make money in an honest way, how we work, what kind of job to take on so we can make money. The second house is interesting because it has also our value system there. So if we have problem with money, we probably have some sort of a problem in our understanding and value system, and how we've been taught about money and about things that we own and things that we that are precious. So if you have problems making money or keeping money, that means that somewhere in your values there's something that's basically working against you and the material part of life. But in general, we have to look at what sign does the second house start in, and then we have to find the ruler of the second house as well and where it is in the chart. And this is one indicator of what our job should be. Not necessarily our career, but if we want to make money, what should we do? The sixth house is the house of everyday work and the way we serve others, the way we serve the public. And this is our everyday schedule. This is how we work. This is our colleagues as well, or the people that we hire. So the sixth house also indicates how we go about in our everyday work life. For example, if we have the sixth house in an earth sign, this would indicate that maybe we are not as flexible, and we don't need to be flexible in our work life. And for example, if you have the sixth house in Gemini or some air sign, we need a lot of communication. We need a lot of moving around, and even especially when there's Gemini anywhere in the chart, it means that we have to be very curious and flexible, and to have at least two things that we switch from so we don't get bored. Again,
how about mine though? My sixth house starts in Aquarius.
it's the same. I mean, you're a rebel. You can't work under any rules, and you prefer to just be on your free schedule. I mean, when there's Aquarius, it suggests that we need to feel the freedom. We need to feel like we are setting the rules. And maybe you are working 24/7, but it doesn't matter because you have decided so. Nobody's telling you to do so. And this is
I don't
super
have the answer
important.
to a boss or something.
Yeah, exactly. Plus your sixth house in Aquarius. I mean, Aquarius is the ruler of astrology, so pretty much explains it. And we are again looking for the ruler to see where in the chart it is, and it gives us more information on what exactly is happening during the day and in our schedule. And then we have the 10th house, which is the house of career. This is the highest point in our chart. This is where we can reach our biggest accomplishments. And this is our vocation. So basically, this is where we are all trying to get to at some point in our lives. And of course, the 10th house sign, where the 10th house starts, suggests what type of career we are going to be heading towards, and our path to getting there. And it might be even, there might be different things that we do in life, and they will always have something to do with the 10th house sign. And of course, the ruler, we're looking for always with the ruler as well. So this is the basics. You get the 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th house. You check their signs and you check where the rulers are. Of course, if there are planets in these houses, they give extra information, and this might mean that you might concentrate your efforts on one of the planets, or in all of them. You might have different type of things that you're doing during your life, so or at the same time. And I have prepared very interesting examples of people with different developments in life. And there's one person who works so many things, and he does it as his career, and they're different. And at the same time, when he's working on them, like I think that at least three things that he does. So yeah, there's actually this example. We have the 2nd house in Aquarius. So that means that this person can make money out of Aquarian things. IT, HR, astrology, you name it. I mean, everything Aquarian can bring money. But to know exactly, maybe to know more specifically what to go towards, we're looking at the ruler, which is Uranus, and Uranus is in Scorpio in the 10th house of career. So some combination between Aquarius and Scorpio, which narrows down the things. It means that through his work and through the way he makes money, he can bring change, he can bring transformation. And he also, both Aquarius and Scorpio are rebels. They don't like to be under anybody's rulership, or they don't want to be answering to anybody. They want to be doing whatever they want. They're quite stubborn, so he needs to be independent, and he needs to be an authority, because the ruler of the 2nd house, the way he makes money, is in the 10th house of authority. Plus he has his ascendant in Capricorn, which is authority itself. So it all leads to being able to work and be independent, and bring change and bring impact into the world.
It's almost like he finds his power by calling the shots, right? 2nd house ruler in 10th.
Yeah. And then we have the 6th house in Gemini. And as I mentioned before, where we have Gemini, we need to have different things that are making things interesting for us. We need to be flexible. We need to be moving constantly, because if he stays in one place for too long, he'll get bored. So the ruler of the 6th house also suggests that throughout his day, he's probably communicating a lot, and that's what he actually does. The interesting part is that his ruler is also in Scorpio in the 10th. So again, this topic of being an authority, being his own boss is and bringing change to the world is something that constantly repeats itself throughout the chart. And there we have the Scorpio 10th house, midheaven. So looking at the ruler is in Pluto is in Libra in the 9th house. So it suggests that his career has to do with higher education and Libra things. Let's say, I don't know, the justice system, which he is part of it as well. So from all these things, what we can say is that he needs to be his own boss. He needs to have at least 2 things that he does, different projects, different work types, and he needs to bring impact and transformation. Plus, he is into teaching, and Libra is not only justice, but also consulting, also working with people. So it's a very social person. Also, we have Venus and Mercury as his highest planets, even though they're in Scorpio, which is quite a difficult sign. Virgo and Venus, they like talking to people. So what he actually does is he's a psychotherapist,
okay.
and he is also a teacher in the university, and he also works in the justice system.
Does he apply his psychotherapy knowledge into criminal justice in particular?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I picked that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a very much of a freelancer kind of nature, and is very project based, or he works in a small group in which there's a very flat hierarchy, because 2nd house Aquarius, they like things like decentralized.
Yeah, well, he works on projects as far as I know, and he always is looking for partnerships at work. I mean, he's just always, wherever he goes, people want to work with him. So he tends to be doing business with people. And this comes up if we're looking at it from the old rulership point of view. Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and his Mars is in the 7th house of business and partnerships. So this also is confirmed, and it's also in the sign of the 8th house, which also has to do with psychology. So it's and from then on we are going to see also, I'm going to talk about the North Node, and the North Node is something very important in everybody's life. Of course, this is probably one of them, if not the most important thing in our chart, because this is our mission in life, and it's always connected with what we do career-wise, I think, anyway. So yeah, we should incorporate the North Node energy in our career path to make sure that we are actually working on this energy, and where where it is positioned, in which house the North Node is, shows where we should concentrate our energy. And of course, we need the ruler of the North Node for more indication and more specification about how to reach out this point of life. Basically, we should be there by our 37th year, when there is the return of the North Node. And yeah, I have because I teach astrology, and I always have this question to my students at the end of our course. There's a test, and one of the questions is I give them an example of the North Node of a person and where their ruler is. And for example, also the ruler of the midheaven. And I ask them, what do you think this person works? They always nail it down. I mean, it's just so important and so obvious when you look at charts and when you look at the North Node and the ruler, and you basically know what the person is doing or what they are supposed to be doing anyway.
Where the soul destiny lies, right?
Yeah. Right. And oops. And there are the North Node examples. And as I said, we can guess. I don't like this word. That's why I put it in. What's the word? I forgot. But anyway, I don't like this word because we're not guessing things here. And
conclude,
there we
was it?
Sorry?
Not guessing, conclude.
We are concluding. We are reading the chart, as well. So there's the North Node in the 3rd house, and this on its own suggests that we should concentrate on communicating on our courses or information of some sort. And the ruler, because the North Node is in Taurus, the ruler is Venus in the 10th house, conjunct Uranus in Sagittarius. So some higher knowledge, maybe teaching some higher knowledge. And I say teaching because the ruler of the midheaven is in Capricorn, and it's Jupiter. Jupiter has to do with education, with higher education as well, foreign languages as well. So this chart is actually my chart. And I have been an English teacher, and I am now an astrologer, Venus conjunct Uranus, and I am also teaching astrology. So it's Uranus is a planet also. This is one thing that I want to mention. Uranus is a planet that suggests if it has to do with our career path, it suggests that we are good at a lot of things and we are ready to experiment with a lot of things, and we are very curious, and we can do more than 1 or 2 different jobs, and they can both be quite important in our life. So just remember that whenever there is Aquarius and Uranus, there is this diversity and there are these options, and people are usually very good at many things, not just one thing, and they should definitely work different things so that they don't get bored. In this chart, in the therapist chart, his North Node is in the 8th house, which is of course the house of psychology, and it's in Virgo, which means Virgo is quite discriminative, and it's basically cleaning the subconsciousness, and the ruler is in Scorpio again. It has to do with psychology, and it's in the 10th house, which suggests that he's an authority in this sphere. So he's pretty good at what he's doing. In this chart, we have the North Node in the 5th house in Pisces, and the ruler is in Sagittarius. Neptune is in Sagittarius. And this woman has her own language center. She's working with kids and foreign languages. So you see 5th house of children, Neptune in Sagittarius, foreign languages. And if we're looking for the old ruler or the co-ruler, Jupiter is in Scorpio. And because I have worked with kids in this kind of business, I know how transformative this is. So Jupiter in Scorpio suggests transforming somebody's life in a way, and conjunct the moon, taking care. Moon is always mothering and has to do with
Moon is
kids.
also like kids, right, as well?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So there you go here. And here we have the last example with the guy whose North Node is in Gemini. This is not as obvious, even though to me it is, because North Node in Gemini, you would say he's probably very chatty, very a person who deals with communication. The ruler is Mercury, and it's in Cancer and in the 11th house. So he's a construction engineer, and he's a very clever guy as well. And he's been working as a construction engineer for a very long time. Constructions are in the 10th house. There's the big structures, and in Cancer has to do with property. So it definitely makes sense. Engineering comes from the 11th house, and Uranus in the 4th opposing the North Node. So it's basically this is what makes it actually quite obvious to me. Now, as far as I know, he's moving more towards the IT sector, but it still makes sense because, again, the North Node is in Gemini. Oops, sorry. And the ruler of the North Node is in the 11th house, which is an Aquarian house. Oh. And the last thing I want to mention is that there are other things that we should be looking at. These were just basics, and if we want to have an in-depth and more detailed understanding, as we are in the Virgo season, we should also, of course, take a look at the sun. The sun is what we came to be, but it doesn't mean that when we are born with the sun in a certain sign, it doesn't mean that we have mastered the sign. So we need to grow into the higher vibration of this particular sun path, and then we look at the ascendant as well, and the ruler of the ascendant, to see how we are going to achieve our sun's potential. And it always has to do with our career path. This is who we are, basically. And as we mentioned before, Saturn and Capricorn, where Saturn and Capricorn are, this is where we are going to be struggling. But also this is where we can become masters of that topic, and this is how we can reach our greatest potential and be feeling materially comfortable, because Saturn is a very material planet, and Capricorn as well has the need of being financially stable. And we can also look at the previous examples and see that, for example, in my chart, Saturn is in the 9th house. So higher education, teaching, philosophy, and because it's in Scorpio, psychology, and I'm more interested in the psychological
esoteric stuff as well.
Yeah, and esoteric stuff and occultism, but I'm very interested in the astrological psychology, psychological astrology. I'm getting mixed up. And it was also very difficult for me to see myself as a teacher. And I always said that I will never be a teacher and I don't want to be a teacher. And then it turns out that I definitely feel it as if that's what I've been born to do. I really enjoy it and it really makes sense to me and makes me happy and fulfilled. So in this chart, we have Saturn in the 8th house. Again, his chart is so psychological.
Yes.
And I don't know too many details about his life, so I'm not quite confident to talk about where exactly are the hardships in such position with Saturn in Virgo in the 8th house. It's definitely not an easy one. But I would
Well, it's just hard
say
to get to know him intimately, I think. Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
and he's also very like he's like a poker face. I mean, it's really hard to read him unless he decides that he can let you. So, but he's really good at reading other people. He's the master of other people's consciousness and subconsciousness, I think, from what I've seen. And a great teacher as well. And then here we have this lady with Saturn in the 7th house, and I know how much she has been struggling with her business and partnerships. But she will probably, I mean, I haven't seen her for ages now, but I know her struggles and she probably will. She has overcome a lot of things in her life in regards to her own business, but also in her personal life as well. And it suggests that she will eventually become the master of these topics. And in this chart, Saturn is in the 3rd house.
3rd house, yeah.
Yeah, in the 3rd house, and it's all about the way of thinking, because it can be quite, I mean, he can be quite stubborn. He is very stubborn, actually. And I think, in my opinion, even though I don't think that anything in life happens without a reason, but I think he has wasted a lot of time in not changing the way he thinks and not changing the way he works. But then when he did the change and when he started thinking, started being more flexible and understanding that things can be different, I think he started making more money as well. He has Uranus.
Is like the builder, archetype.
Yeah. And here the geniosity is coming from Mercury conjunct Uranus, even though it's quite a wide conjunction, but still very, very clever person. So yeah, that's about it from my point of view. What do you have?
What do I have? I'll just share my screen in a minute. And what I want to bring in terms of vocational indicators are Oriental planet and the concept of an Arabic part called the part of profession. And the third one would be the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint. Let's start off with Oriental planet, and it's actually defined as the planet that rises just before the sun. And for this criteria, I actually narrow it down to Sun to Pluto plus Chiron.
I was about to ask, do you work with the
10 minus the sun.
Okay.
So because I find that the Oriental planet actually flavors, or as I put down here, serves as the brushstroke. into the astral portrait when I look into someone's like vocational profiling. And the Oriental planet actually is about, or it actually tells me what does the personality need to illuminate to satisfy the soul's expression on the job. And I don't usually, in my case at least, take into account Mercury and Venus when I talk about the Oriental planet. So out of the 10 I mentioned just now, I take away Mercury and Venus. This is because Mercury and Venus are actually tied to the movement of the sun. So there's a good chance that out of 10, quite a number will have either Mercury or Venus or both rising before the sun, serving as the chart's Oriental planet. But I must mention here that a lot of Hollywood actors and actresses and artists usually have Venus Oriental. That means Venus is a morning star. So it rises before the sun to the ascendant of the chart. And when we talk about Mercury Oriental, actually a lot of merchants, traders, and even teachers and writers have their planet rising just before the sun. That I want to talk about is this Arabic part that's called part of profession. Now, I do look at the more obvious Arabic part, which is the part of fortune, like most astrologers do. Part of fortune is actually about the combination of sun, moon, and ascendant. And hence, it's a very important part of the chart that we need to look at of what makes the person truly happy in terms of mind and spirit in order to be fulfilled. But for this part of profession, I shorten it to the term POP, so it's easy to remember, POP. And this particular Arabic part actually combines the ascendant, the moon, and Saturn placements. And this will kind of give like an additional flavoring or coloring about career interests and activities. And I've actually put the formula right here. It is ascendant plus moon minus Saturn. And the sources that this formula come from is from these two astrologers. And when I think about it, the moon is really about the mind and emotional gratifications, what we are inclined to do. And Saturn actually brings about the determination and organization and the integrity, the hard work that's involved, the grind of things. And if I were to combine the three parts, which are ascendant, the moon, and also Saturn, this really talks about where can we apply our emotional and mental discipline, because moon is also about the mind as well, and the determination and the hard work in order to attain that deep, tangible, mental and emotional fulfillment. And as with any Arabic part, I look at the sign and house that it actually sits in, and then the ruler of that part of profession and the aspects to the planet to kind of paint or build that picture around it of what needs to happen, or I should say what conditions and energies need to be infused into work and career in order for that person to feel alive. And where can that person actually apply his or her energy to in order to get, at the end of the day, that very deep emotional satisfaction and fulfillment. So the very last point that I want to touch on is I use the concept of midpoints. And the midpoint is defined as the middle distance between two bodies in the chart. So in this case, the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint will be the center point of the shorter distance between these two planets. And when we talk about a Jupiter-Pluto midpoint, this really is about, especially when an angle of a chart or another planet actually occupies this particular specific point, it tells me that what can actually be brought into the work or profession with a promise of success and influence. And Jupiter-Pluto, when I think about these two planets mixed together energetically, it also brings wealth, a lot of wealth. And it's also a part of the chart that refers to where you need to strategically maneuver and position yourself in order to be successful in what you do. So I've put some examples here.
It probably doesn't promise us to become millionaires, does it?
But when you actually apply the principles of like this midpoint, for example, if you are Elton John or Harrison Ford, they both have their natal sun occupying this Jupiter-Pluto midpoint. And this actually is one of several things. When you have sun occupying the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint, it actually brought them, on one hand, a huge ego. Because it can happen. But with their ego is also the desire to become a self-made person or individual. It actually is a very hugely motivating factor. And you can also be like a master of great powers as well. There's like this huge manifestation energy that's behind you. When you have sun and moon in particular occupying this midpoint.
Do you think that people can have such position in their chart, like Elton John and Harrison Ford, but not use it? Or is there some inner power that actually makes you make use of this energy?
As with anything in astrology, there are different like levels of what do you call that? Where each planet and each midpoint will function in your chart. And if you use it for destructive purposes, yeah, I mean, when we talk about Jupiter-Pluto, it can also mean someone who's doing something criminal as well, potentially. So they can be very good at what they do, but just doing what, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. But then energetically, when the sun occupies the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint as per Elton John and Harrison Ford, they have extremely big goals, which leads to eventual success. So is that sun illuminating this midpoint that they will kind of manifest that on one hand, huge ego, but on one hand, they always want to aim high in life, bigger, better, wealthier, you know, is tapping into that manifestation energy of this particular midpoint that that led them or helped them to set them off on a life path of success. And I've put down here also for Michael Jordan, he's got his natal midheaven activating this Jupiter-Pluto midpoint. And I've mentioned earlier about this midpoint having the energy of strategic maneuvering and positioning strategies. So isn't it kind of, he's being known for being very nimble on the basketball court, and he maneuvers his way into success. And of course, it earned him a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the process. So for the example, I've actually pulled up Aleister Crowley's chart to kind of look at how the Oriental planet, his part of profession, and also his how his Jupiter-Pluto midpoint has played into his life's work. And for those who know who he is, he's actually written a lot of books in his life, and it has to do a lot with ritualistic magic. And he's also the author of a book on esoteric astrology as well. So let's look at how
and he's also known for the Thoth tarot card system.
So let's look at his Oriental planet, and the sun is located at 19 degrees of Libra. But then there's actually no planets in Virgo, but then there's Uranus in Leo sitting in his first house, which I identify as his rising or Oriental planet. And when I think about Uranus as someone's Oriental planet, it's basically the planet of the freelancer. It's basically the planet of being an independent business owner, first and foremost. Uranus is also the planet of a helping and healing and humanitarian archetype as well. Because Uranus actually co-rule Aquarius, and Aquarius, as we know, is all about the progression of humanity. He or she may be ahead of his or her time, but then sooner or later his work will be appreciated by subsequent generations after. Uranus is also the planet of astrology, and hence he's written books on that. Uranus is also the planet of adventure and excitement, and also diversification as well. So besides writing on astrology, he's also written books on really many different topics, in which I can tell by just like putting his name into Wikipedia and look at the body of work that he has done in his lifetime. But then Uranus has this kind of very edgy, very nervous energy that's surrounding it, because Uranus is almost like a lightning bolt or thunderbolt kind of energy. And so when someone has got Uranus as the Oriental planet, work has to somehow serve as an extension of his or her nervous energy. It's like an output, or the work needs to somehow be helping him or her to get rid of the excess mental energy in the head. So this kind of sums up that he is someone who is potentially an astrologer. So that kind of covers it. So now let's move on to the part of profession, which is this POP right here. And for him, he actually falls into his second Placidus house, and also whole sign house in the sign of Virgo. And the sign of Virgo is really about something that's ritualistic. That's why Virgo actually rules our daily routines. And the ruler of that part of profession, which is Mercury, is actually sitting in the sign of Scorpio, conjunct Jupiter. And so he's writing something potentially, or he's able to distill ideas surrounding rituals. And the ruler of Virgo, which is Mercury, is sitting in the sign of Scorpio. So something that's a cult ritual.
Okay, yeah.
So he's written books surrounding that as well, and also written something that's very psychological as well. And he managed to because Virgo is a very weaving sign, and he manages to weave like seemingly different disciplines into one cohesive whole. That's what Virgo does. It distills the interdisciplinary information into a cohesive whole. And also, if we look at the ruler of that part of profession, which is Mercury, it actually forms what I call a T-square with Uranus and Saturn. And this also brings in the energy of the ascendant and descendant. As what Radostina mentioned earlier, ascendant is really how we approach life or how we get on with life. So he'll be using a lot of his mercurial qualities, combining it with astrology, which is Uranus over here, and perhaps becoming a teacher as well, of sorts, with others or with the public. Seventh house is how you interact with the public. So when Saturn is there, he may or may not be the most kind of friendly person. But then not to forget that Saturn is in his home sign and is opposing Uranus. So this actually tells me that in his first and seventh house, by the way, so it's almost like he will actively, first and seventh house, because it's a cardinal house, first, fourth, seventh, and 10th, to use his mental faculties towards the progression of humanity. And he'll somehow become like an authority figure in terms of that. And this is done via writing, which is mercurial, or other forms of communication back then, but also publishing books as well, because Mercury is pretty close to Jupiter, which is the sign of like the publisher of things. In order to spread his healing and helping message behind things out to the world. Also, one very interesting thing is that because his birth time is relatively accurate, and so I looked at what aspects his part of profession actually links to the rest of his chart. And for him, his part of profession is actually very close to squaring the ascendant and midheaven midpoint, which is indicated right here. So it's a square aspect. And when we talk about the ascendant and midheaven aspect, it's really about what energies is he predisposed to actively manifest in his daily life. This is what this midpoint is about, because it is the middle point of the ascendant, which is, you know, the physical body and you, and the midheaven, which is on top of vocation or career, is also about where your highest state of consciousness is located, because the midheaven is the highest point in anyone's chart, and this is where you talk directly to God. And when the part of profession is the most highly expected thing to it, it actually tells me that he will be using his part of profession characteristics and actively manifest it in his life on a day-to-day basis. So the third and last part of this delineation is about the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint. And for him, the middle point of where Jupiter and Pluto is, Mercury is actually occupying this specific midpoint. And this really emphasizes his mercurial properties. It's in the fourth house, is a house of, on one hand, security, property and land. But fourth house is also about the deepest part of our consciousness. And he has
how come
that as well.
How come Mercury occupies the midpoint? Because Jupiter is here and Pluto is here, so wouldn't the midpoint be somewhere here? I think you have actually.
Yeah. So I've actually also generated the midpoint tree according to this chart. And this is actually pulled out from Solar Fire. For me, I actually look at the not only the conjunction, the opposition, I also look at the square aspect. And this is the midpoint tree, I would like to call it. And I look to this in every client's chart actually for some deeper layers of clarity. And if I look at his Mercury tree, his Mercury actually squares this particular midpoint.
Yeah.
Some astrologers actually use also the semi-square. That means 45 degrees.
Yeah.
And so it will actually lengthen each midpoint tree even longer. So at some point I need to do a cutoff because otherwise there's just too much information and you get lost in the forest and can't see the light. So I stop at usually the square. So anything that's, which means Mercury can be expecting this particular midpoint, which is Jupiter-Pluto via conjunction, opposition, and square. And I stop at the square. But some people use semi-square as well, which is, you know, each to their own. And this actually emphasizes a lot on the mercurial properties of writing, of disseminating information. And then that Mercury rules back everything in his chart that's Virgo. And anything that is in the sign of Gemini, which are both like very communicative signs. But then Virgo is really about distilling the information into and weaving those information into a cohesive whole.
Very interesting.
And he's got his Mercury conjunct Jupiter, so he's a teacher or the guru. Jupiter is also the advisor, the counselor as well, archetype, very much of the ninth house-ish energies that comes along with it. And ninth house, as we mentioned earlier, is also the part of the chart that deals with publishing. And so he's got his whole body of work published into books. And these are probably stemming from his intuitive knowings, which is like Scorpio fourth house energy. This also can be something psychological as well. Some information can even be channeled.
Yeah.
When we talk about the fourth house Scorpionic energy. And on top of that, of course, the occult, metaphysical, esoteric, you know, wisdom. Because of the conjunction to Jupiter, that wisdom comes along. And knowledge as well. And he somehow just managed to weave whatever that he's got knowledge-wise into like volumes of books. And not to mention that Scorpio is also one's legacy as well. And so that is his legacy. His legacy lives through his books.
Yeah.
What he's written so far. And his Jupiter-Pluto midpoint is also about where you can gain infamy or legacy. So it ties in nicely with this representation. So his writing, Mercury, communications, and books become his ultimate long-living legacy.
We're very, very thorough. Especially
well, there's a lot more things I didn't mention, but you know, we have a lot of tools up our, you know, sleeves.
Yeah, astrology is like a sea of information, and we cannot ever go into all of the details that we are using. And I think that it was pretty practical. This video was pretty practical and useful, as Virgos want it to be.
Well, each time when someone books in a reading with me to read about their vocation or career direction, I actually have a nicely written out 28 step methodology
I think that it's very,
that I
yeah,
use. I actually like
you
scribble.
have a lot of
like,
Virgo.
go through that 28 steps. And then with that 28 steps, I like, as the Virgo rising myself, I combine what I see pictorial wise, and when it kind of repeats itself time and time and time over again, it builds that that imagery in my mind. And I make my own conclusions, like, I've written down certain recommendations for that person.
I think it's important to mention as well that when you go to an astrologer and ask for career direction, it doesn't mean that in life you will be just hopping on right on your career direction and that's that. I mean, you have to go on your path. You have to experience certain experiences, and you have to learn certain things in order to find your best option, and in order to find your vocation. So sometimes it has to be a few things that you have to go over until you get to your final and happiest place in regards to work life. So don't worry when you get, like, for example, answers like, well, you have to do something with studying communication and I don't know, just running all over the place, being restless, because this will teach you a lot of things in order to get to your higher point.
I actually, when someone books in a reading with me, the first reply email that I send them is that it's actually a small paragraph I've written. And I always tell the client that your vocation or your ultimate life career path, so to speak, is never a straight line.
Exactly.
And I usually put into the paragraph what I've worked as in my previous jobs or string of jobs that led me up to this point. But when I look back in retrospect, each and every single job that I've done in the corporate world has somehow contributed to what I'm actually doing in terms of skills development.
And it can be described by the same, like, second, sixth, and 10th house and your north node, and it all fits in. But you have to walk this path in order to find what really makes you feel amazing.
I think it's that preconception that going to an astrologer is the end all and be all.
Yeah.
Anything more to add?
I think this was a wonderful talk, and I hope that everybody enjoyed it. And if you feel like getting in touch with us, feel free to message us.
Yes, and all our details will be in the description box below. Just one parting message, because a lot of people come to me for a vocational career reading. Their first question on their mind is that when will things go back to normal?
Not going back to anywhere.
No. And I usually explain to them the difference between a cyclical change and a structural change. A cyclical change means that things go up and down in the market, but you're still in the same era. But right now, what we are going through is a structural change. So it's like one straight path and it's the point of no return. So I just want to put that out there so that people will be like more informed about not deluding yourself with like when will things go back to normal, because we've already shifted from the earth to air era. And
we're here to help if you feel uncertain and if you need to talk to somebody for some time frame and timeline. Soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.